one can say we are already in a war. India targeted 9 terrorist infrastructures in Pakistan. There were 4 terrorists who came and who chose people based on their religion, who basically asked that who's a Hindu here, who's a Muslim here, Muslims go this way, Hindus go this way. And then Pakistan last night actually sent 400 drones and missiles, which were all neutralized by the Indian air defense system, which is called Akash.
I think Pakistan never attacks through army. They always do a proxy war, which is through terrorists. So one was in 2016 in Uri, second was in 2019 in Pulwama. Both were given strong retaliation attack by India.
It is a very painful chapter in the human history because it led to the loss of life of a lot of people.
Thank you so much to be in my channel. It's called Mindfulness with Manish. Today I have a guest, important guest today. His name is Subhasish. He has been in my channel before where we talked about different topic. It was on spirituality, meditation, and how to be calm in this busy world. Today we are bringing another topic on India and Pakistan war. We will talk about that. But before we do that, just a quick introduction. Subhasish is working in Silicon Valley in one of the big tech companies, Google, as a group product manager. He leads a lot of product managers and he's working in security, cloud and storage domain. Before Google, he was in different tech companies like Dell, NetApp, Your Storage. In free time, he also likes to play guitar. He sings very well. And also he's very interested and written articles on geopolitics. So that's the goal for today's podcast, to talk about geopolitics, war, as well as the current situation with India and Pakistan. Thank you so much, Subhasish, to be in my channel.
Thank you, Manish, for inviting me once again. It's always a joy to talk to you and discuss various aspects.
Sounds good. So, Subhash, there's a lot of topics and today is May 10th, I think, May 10th, right? So, a lot of things happening like right now in the world. The world is changing at a very high pace. One of the interesting things that is happening is the India-Pakistan war. So, that is very important topic for us to discuss as people living in Bay Area, as well as Indians who are in the US, and how that is impacting us. So that will be the topic of our discussion. Sure. Okay. Sounds good. So India-Pakistan has already been is very hot topic, as you know. So before we jump into the discussion about the current scenario, let's talk about a little bit about the history of India-Pakistan. Go about little summary.
Sure. So India and Pakistan used to be one country, which was India. There was a time, if you go back in history, entire India was the entire subcontinent. India was comprising of a lot of different countries which have now been split over time. India and Pakistan got their independence at around the same time when the Britishers left the Indian subcontinent. But as a parting gift, they did the partition of India, and it is a very painful chapter in the human history because it led to the loss of life of a lot of people, and it sparked a bunch of communal riots, and there has been a lot of riots which have happened afterwards because this partition was done on the basis of religion. So when the Britishers left, they ensured that they partitioned India into India and Pakistan. India is where all the Hindus will live and Pakistan is where all the Muslims will live. But the fact of the matter is, when it was an undivided country, India and Pakistan together, so what is geographically Pakistan today, there were a lot of Hindus there. And what is geographically India today, there were a lot of Muslims there. So this partition caused a bunch of Muslims from the land which we call India today to cross over to the Pakistani land, and a lot of Hindus to cross over from the Pakistani land to India. And there were tight timelines. It was a complete mess and led to the loss of a lot of lives here. So India and Pakistan started out as independent countries like that. There was a two-nation theory. The Britishers basically implemented, and they wanted to perpetuate this idea of the two nation theory, where one nation is for the Hindus and one nation is for the Muslims, and the British perpetuated that right from the get. But that never happened. That never happened, and for India at least. Yeah, and it is never true. Like, even if you look at India today, right? There are 41 crore Muslims in India. It is probably the largest country in the world in terms of Muslim population. I might be wrong, but even if it is not the largest, it is one of the largest, and by far it could be the largest, right? So even today, you have humongous amount of Muslim population in India. India is not a communal country. India is not a country of just Hindus. India has Muslims, India has Christians, India has Sikhs, India has Buddhists, Jainis. There are so many different religion, people practicing so many different religion are in India. So it was a very, very cynical thing for the British to divide India into two based on two different religions. But that's how India and Pakistan started. And a major difference between India's story and the Pakistan story is India has been a very successful democracy. And it is by design. If you look at the constitution of India, if you look at how elections happen in India, how we uphold the constitution, India has been a powerhouse of democracy. India is the largest democracy and India is the most vibrant democracy. But if you look at Pakistan, democracy is non-existent. Pakistani governments are just rubber stamp. Pakistan is run by the army. And because Pakistan is run by the Pakistani army always has this concern that the Pakistani people may actually want a real democracy.
Yeah.
And Pakistani people may actually not want army to be the chief power brokers in Pakistan. So they might actually oppose the army. So how do you ensure that your countrymen love your army? How do you ensure that your countrymen should think army is very important, army is doing a very important job? That happens when your country is under attack. So that is the reason why there has been multiple wars between India and Pakistan. And Pakistan Army and ISI, they have a lot of proxies, a lot of different terrorist organizations. And if you look at the history of these terrorist organizations, what they are trying to do two things. One thing is they are trying to spark communal riots within India between Hindus and Muslims. They might do an attack where they target only one community, right? They might just target Hindus and kill them, and they think, oh, maybe in India there will be a communal riot. But the bigger thing they want is there should be a war between India and Pakistan. Because if there is a war between India and Pakistan, army will be in the limelight and the Pakistani population will think army is doing a great job and army needs to be supported. So because of Pakistan army's need to be loved by the Pakistani population, to be supported by the Pakistani population, and to continue to have power, there is this need to always escalate tensions between India and Pakistan and to have all these wars.
Right. As you mentioned, there has been multiple wars with Pakistan. I think there has been like 4 wars. And all the 4 wars, we know the results, right? India won. And this time, under Modi government, which started in 2014, if we recall all the past major attacks that happened by, I think Pakistan never attacks through army. They always do a proxy war, which is through terrorist. So one was in 2016 in Uri, second was in 2019 in Pulwama. Both were given a strong retaliation attack by India. In Uri through surgical strikes and 19 is through air strikes, right? Right now in 2025, what we have seen is like bunch of tourists were attacked in Helgaon, 25 Indians and one Nepali, by asking their religion, which is really bad, right? That sparked a lot of like hatred between these two countries. And this time, like it all started on May 7th, still going on, started by India because of Pahalgam. So if you can tell a little bit about the series of events that happened, that would be great.
Sure. So, much like what happened in Israel, where there was a musical festival that was going on and there were a lot of civilians attending that music festival, and then Hamas came and Hamas killed people and Hamas took a lot of people as refugees, which started the Israel versus Hamas conflict, or the Israel versus Hamas war, which later on included Hezbollah and included the Houthis, and now Iran and Israel are, in a skirmish. It's a very similar thing that happened this time where there was a tour operator who took some tourists to a valley in Kashmir, and there were 4 terrorists who came and who chose people based on their religion, who basically asked that who's a Hindu here, who's a Muslim here, Muslims go this way, Hindus go this way. So then they chose the Hindus, Hindu men, and I think it's like 25 or 25 plus Hindu men. They just killed them, gunned down, and they said to their wives, like the men who had wives, they told them, go and tell Modi that we did this. So it was a very cynical attack which has a religious tint to it. But as I mentioned before, it is done with the hope on the terrorist side that it will spark a Hindu-Muslim riot in India. But it is a testament to India's democracy and, the whole architecture of peace in India that it did not spark any riots at all. But when something like this happens, terrorism, there should be zero tolerance for terrorism, because if there are terror attacks like this and then the government does not ensure that there is a very high consequence or there is a very, very high cost that the terrorists have to pay, or the people behind the terrorists, people who are actually planning these terror attacks, they have to pay a very high price. Unless the government ensures it, this sort of attacks will happen, right? So it was paramount that India took a response, which was an exemplary response. It was a massive response, right? So that it's a deterrent for any future attacks like this, because whoever is planning these attacks, they need to be scared. They need to think that if I do one more attack like this, I cannot bear the cost. So then what happened is, India took, I think, 13, 14 days, did meticulous planning. India targeted 9 terrorist infrastructures in Pakistan and POK, in Pakistan occupied Kashmir and also proper Pakistan. So India chose 9 terrorist architecture sites, and then India did airstrikes and missile strikes on those. And I think government has prepared a list. There are more than 100 terrorists who have been killed in these attacks.
Right. And instead, of course, like Pakistan is claiming that civilians are killed, there's no terror, because Pakistan never tells, right, there's terrorists in our country. So again, the same agenda. But yeah, as you rightly mentioned, first India attacked those infrastructures, and then Pakistan sent missiles also to India, and that was like neutralized by India anti-missile system. And right now we came to know that Lahore port and air base, as you mentioned, are destroyed. But let's see what happens next. So according to you, what do you think as the next steps going to happen?
So one can say we are already in a war, because India did missile strikes and bombing in Pakistani territory, and then Pakistan has killed 15 Indian civilians through shelling. It was another cynical attack on civilians. And then Pakistan last night actually sent 400 drones and missiles, which were all neutralized by the Indian air defense system, which is called Akash. It is like how Israel has Iron Dome. So the Indian system is called Akash. So it destroyed all the drones and the missiles. So when you have attacks from both sides, and then India also attacked Pakistan's air defense system, and India has claimed that it has destroyed the Pakistan air defense system, right? And then you also mentioned about some other ports. Yeah. So if you look at it, one could argue that we are already in a war. The war has already started. It is an act of war. What's going on is war. What else is war, right? But there are types of war. There are varieties of war, whether war is happening on the ground, whether war is happening in the air, whether war is happening in the water. So there are different types. It seems like we are in a combination right now, and we are in a particular intensity. I think in terms of geopolitics, it is still not categorized as war. I think people are still categorizing it as a conflict, but it could very well be a phase of a war that is going on.
Yeah.
At the very least, you can say it is a conflict which is going on, pretty high escalated conflict. Now from here, it all depends on the two countries, how they choose to respond and how long they choose to escalate. So the terrorist attack happened. After that, India did a very targeted attack. India did not attack civilians. They did not attack Pakistani military. India attacked the terrorists. But after that, the attacks from Pakistan involved attacking civilians. So then India did some more attacks. So now Pakistan is attacking, India is attacking. So we are in an escalation cycle here, right? So if this escalation cycle spirals out of control, it could be a full-fledged war. And this is, we are talking about two nuclear nations, right? So it could go into a full-fledged war, or it could just remain in the intensity it is. It might slowly slow down and it could stop.
Right.
But it all depends on how much of an escalation is going on. And the way I look at it, Indian army is probably 10 to 12 times bigger than the Pakistani army. If you look at Indian ammunitions and Indian battle gear, India is probably again much more larger, yeah, much more oversized as compared to Pakistan. So I think it really depends. Like India can keep fighting a war for a long time, right? But the Pakistani economy is not there. The Pakistani armaments are not there. So the way I see it is totally depends on Pakistan.
Depends upon Pakistan.
If Pakistan continues to escalate, I think India will escalate.
But there's a thing about money, right? Money reserve. So if Pakistan keeps on fighting, we all know that Pakistan doesn't have that much money. So he's asking for money from IMF and other sources. IMF also just approved the loan. So even Turkey is helping Pakistan. So if that keeps on happening, yeah, you are right. Pakistan will get resources and funding from other nations. But if that is stopped completely, then Pakistan can lose the fight. And we can also see another Bangladesh created. Like another parts of Pakistan, like, Balochistan is also fighting within Pakistan to have its own country. Then Sindh is there, then Punjab is there. We can also see that kind of thing that can happen if India wants that. What do you think?
Yeah, if Pakistan and India get into a complete war, all-out war, and if the war lasts for a long time, given the size of Pakistani army, they won't be able to fight a multi-front war. Like they won't be able to fight in Balochistan also, but fight in Kashmir also, then fight in the Punjab province also, and then fight, on your water border as well. So if Pakistan has to fight a four-front war at the same time, I think it is highly likely that things are going to break in Pakistan, right? But I don't think it's a time of war. We are not in times where warmongering should happen. I think it's a time for peace. So I don't know if India also wants to fight a war at this point, because if you look at Indian economy, it is the fastest growing economy in the world. India is doing amazingly well in economy, in the technology sector, in the education sector. So much innovation going on in India. I don't think India also wants to engage in a war at this point. It doesn't help the Indian economy or the India growth story, right?
Yeah.
So under Prime Minister Modi, if you see the level of development and the breakneck pace of development which is going on, how much highways and freeways India has built, bullet trains, the kind of infrastructure development is taking place, how we are conquering the space, how in technology we are starting so many enterprises, so many startups. Like India's focus seems somewhere else. India's focus seems on development, right? But I think in Pakistan, army is very much focused on using their proxies and creating a war situation with India, because a war with India helps the Pakistan army, right? So there is this conflict of incentives. But having said that, if Pakistan continues to engage in escalation, India will do so. And then if Pakistan is not rational, if Pakistan keeps on doing this war, I think it's quite possible that Pakistan might break. Lots of things could happen.
No, as you rightly said, no one wants a war. War actually takes a country 100 years back in terms of everything, like infrastructure, growth and everything. But don't you think it's a proxy war, like done by a few countries which are developed or almost developed, and Pakistan is just a proxy for them?
So geopolitics is always very, very complicated, right? So for Pakistan to fight how much they have fought now and to fight beyond, Turkey has helped. We already know that Pakistan is using Turkey's ammunition.
Right.
Then, for quite some time, China has been supporting Pakistan. China supported Pakistan with the nuclear know-how also. Pakistan became a nuclear nation with China's help, right? And various developed countries over time has funded Pakistan for various different reasons and causes that they had, right? So it's a very connected world when it comes to conflicts and wars. So if this war continues and it evolves, Pakistan would require military support, they would require armed support. Different countries will be involved. Different countries are already involved. More countries will get involved. So it would become a very complex war in terms of the proxies involved. But we have already seen these things happen. I mean, what is going on between Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah.
You see, Ukraine has been getting arms from the US.
Yeah.
They are getting support from the EU, right? So on the surface, it's a war between Russia and Ukraine. But if you see all the alignments, it's not just between Russia and Ukraine. It's also between Russia and the EU. It's also between Russia and the US, right? So in today's day and age, when a war or a conflict happens, like same thing with Israel.
Israel and Hamas. But the problem was like Hamas and Israel, they were not, like only Israel is a nuclear nation, not Hamas. And the same as Ukraine and Russia, only Russia. But here we have both the countries are nuclear nations. So India won't start a nuclear fight, but if Pakistan starts, India, 1/3 country will be destroyed. As Atal Bihari Vajpayee said one day.
So India has this policy of never doing first attack. So India has this nuclear policy. It's India's own policy. It's India's internal policy that we will never do first strike. But if somebody strikes, then we will respond. But there is a technicality there. Somebody strikes does not mean somebody comes to India and detonates a nuclear war. So we will wait till 1/3 of the country is destroyed and then we'll do a response. It is actually not like that. It is very nuanced. So if you take the case of Pakistan, in Pakistan, the actual nuclear warheads and the device which is going to launch the nuclear warhead, right? So the actual nuclear arm and the device topology which is going to launch that nuclear arm, they're kept into different places. So the moment Pakistan activates both and they move both to the same location, not only India, every single nuclear nation in the world actually knows when they are doing it.
Oh, they know when they are doing it.
They know. So the reconnaissance and technology is so advanced that the moment Pakistan touches those two, they are not in the same place.
Pakistan can bypass anything. They don't regulate any laws. They don't.
No, it's not about laws.
Okay.
It is about technology or tracking, so they cannot hide it. Not only India, but all the major nuclear nations are going to know that Pakistan is moving their separate heads. And then when they unite it, that's when they can launch an attack. So it's a very nuanced point. The second strike, like India will not do first strike. India will only respond. But in my understanding, the moment India senses that Pakistan is going to do an attack on India, they have already taken nuclear action. So from a technical interpretation, first strike has already happened.
Yeah.
Even before they've actually attacked.
It's in the mile that they have already proven that, okay, they is going to start.
They're going to start. So India is not going to wait. In my opinion, India is not going to wait till India gets struck and 1/3 of India gets destroyed. The moment India knows for a fact that Pakistan is about to attack India, nuclear attack, India is free to do a nuclear attack and it could be a preemptive attack. But I feel, the thing is, if Pakistan acts rationally, I don't think a nuclear war will ever happen because both the countries are nuclear countries. And worst case scenario, both the countries will be totally destroyed. Best case scenario, both the countries will not be totally destroyed, but there will be humongous destruction and human life, death. But if worst case scenario happens, both the countries might get annihilated. So I think better sense will prevail and neither of the countries are going to escalate it to a nuclear war. So this is where both countries being nuclear helps, because one knows that if I do something, the other country is going to respond in the same kind.
Yeah.
So my hope is it doesn't escalate to anything.
Yeah, and also there's international pressure also, right? So yeah, one point is India knows that okay, they have like combined the bomb as well as the thing that carries the bomb. But the world also knows, like US, Russia, they all come yes to stop because no one wants a nuclear war because everyone has seen a Japan example. Yes, right. So that is rightly said. So I think one thing is nuclear war. Second thing is the consequences of a war, right? So one thing which I'm seeing, and you can add on to that detail, is like okay, the air traffic might go up, the air cost and tickets and everything, because for Indian Airlines they have to take a turn, or they need to take a route not from the Pakistan. So I was looking at the news that okay, the air traffic might go up, and then I think that is one thing. I don't know about other things which can be the consequences. You can tell more.
Yeah, I mean, there would be a hit on the economy, both for the Pakistan economy as well as for Indian economy. There is going to be a hit. There are more minor impacts, like for example, already in so many Indian villages which are close to the border, there has been blackouts. So at night, no power, blackout, so that if Pakistani aircrafts enter Indian airspace, they cannot see where there is light and they cannot target those civilian habitats and they cannot do destruction, right? So there are all sorts of impacts in the borders, like are the students going to the schools or are the schools closed, right? There are, I think, more than a dozen Indian airports where the flight operations are ceased. So big planes are not taking off because Indian government is not taking a chance, because these airports are very close to the border with Pakistan. What if Pakistani missiles shoot down, or what if Pakistani jet fighters attack an Indian civilian aircraft, right? So where are these impacts? I think the biggest impact would be in terms of the economy, because to fund a war, to continue a war, it will take a toll on the economy. I think in general it will shift the focus from the right things that a country need to grow to things which nobody needs, like war, for example, right? And then, as you mentioned, like air travel, like Air India, for example, is flying from United States to India. They used to fly non-stop,
Yeah.
but because now they have to go away in their routes and not fly over Pakistan, so they are taking a route where they have to actually do a stopover, refuel, and then take a second leg and then land in India. So more elongated routes, technical stops. You need to have crew where you are doing the stop, where you are refueling. You need to do a change of crew. So obviously ticket costs will go up. So there are all these things that would happen, and now also some of the Western Indian seaports now are heavily guarded with submarines. So trade might get diverted from those ports to some other ports, like southern ports in India or the eastern ports in India. Then you have to transport all those goods to western parts in India or northern parts in India. So there can be some inflation. So this can be some quite office here. This war. That is true. One thing which I was thinking is another consequences is the water, right? So India has stopped water supply to Pakistan. I'm not sure where other sources of water is coming to Pakistan, but that was one of the biggest sources from the Indus Valley, I think, treaty that was signed long time before. They keep on like stopping water and then sometimes supplying to overflood the region. That is another thing, but it's a trouble for people for sure, for Pakistan. But yeah, overall, I would like to say, yeah, war should not happen, but hats off to Indian Army and overall our armed forces. Because of them, we are protected and we sleep every night because they are the one guarding the borders. But everyone wants peace, so I hope this war stops. Also, like one thing is because of the Indian armed forces, everybody is able to sleep in peace. The other thing is that Indian Army has shown extreme amount of restraint in how Indian Army responded. Indian Army did not strike a single location with civilians or they did not target a single Pakistani military installation or base. They identified and they targeted terrorist bases, and they only attacked terrorist infrastructure, right? So Indian Army has shown tremendous restraint. They have shown tremendous ethics in how they went about the strike. Indian Army is extremely ethical, right? So that's why I have hopes that we'll probably not see this thing spiral out of control, because Indian Army is not a warmongering army.
Yeah.
And Prime Minister Modi and the other ministers, like, all of them are pretty wise. I don't think anybody wants a war, and nobody wants to really profit from a war here.
Right.
The only response that Indian Army initially chose, they chose because as a sovereign nation, you have to protect your civilians.
Right.
And if your civilians are attacked in such a brutal way, if there is such a bad terrorist attack, you have to take example.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
And we have seen the examples in the past, right? So if we keep on just telling, okay, we're gonna go to UN or US and complain about this attack, nothing gonna happen.
Nothing's right.
Yeah. So we have to answer the same way they are doing for us, which is attacking them.
Absolutely. If you think, right, like 9/11, when 9/11 happened, you see how US responded after 9/11, right? So US went and attacked Afghanistan. And then we had a war in Afghanistan and US occupation, which lasted for such a long time, right? You just imagine if Russia gets attacked, if there is a terrorist attack in Russia today, what is Russia going to do, right? So you have to defend your territory, you have to defend your people, and you have to you have to take exemplary action. Otherwise, you are just inviting more and more terrorist attacks. Like, one of the things India did not do well when the Congress party was in power and 26/11 happened. Mumbai had terrorist attack. India did not respond.
Yeah.
India just diplomatically took up the matter, but there was no exemplary.
That was the biggest terrorist attack in India, according to me. Yeah, India should have responded.
India should have responded, but that government was a very different government. But this government is a very nationalist government. It's a very, very nationalistic government, and it has India's best interests. So war is not good, but neither is terrorism. And you have to take exemplary action against terrorism.
Yeah. There was a movie, or there was another terrorist attack. There's a movie called I See, some name of the flight.
Yeah.
The terrorists hijacked that plane and they took it to Afghanistan and asked for Kandahar.
Yes.
Asked for release of one of the terrorists.
Yeah.
From Jaish-e-Mohammed.
Yes, Jaish-e-Mohammed's head. His name is, I think, Azhar Masood or something.
Yeah. So his family got attacked in this missile attack, but he's still there.
Yes.
We see his photos and videos with army people when they went to the grave and all. That proves that army is with the terrorist. Nobody can deny that. So, and also attacking those proves that Indian army did a great thing, not attacking the civilians, but actually a terrorist. Yeah. So that was one of the proof, which Pakistan always asks.
Absolutely. So my real hope is that Pakistani army acts rationally. You may have a skirmish, you might have some fight you do for some time, but then de-escalate and pave a better future. That would be the best outcome from here on. But if they continue to escalate, I think it will be a mutual escalation.
Right.
So let's see what happens.
Yeah, let's see what happens. And another controversy which I was reading at it is because of the China. If we can name few countries.
There will always be big players involved in any such situations. One of the things is really, really developed countries. Who are the biggest developed countries? I think some of them, if not all of them, they don't want other countries to become developed, right? They don't want more competition because economies are intertwined in so many different ways. Like, one country imports a bunch of stuff from another country. Now, if that country, instead of that country from which they import, they start importing from another country.
Yeah.
And if the second country becomes very good in manufacturing, then that goes against the interests of the first country, right? So there are so many such incentives and intricacies involved in geopolitics. War between two countries these days are seldom war between two countries. Many countries are involved in some way or the other in funding or in interest alignment. So all this,
the thing that we see in the news, not the Indian media news, that is pretty crap. I was looking at Indian news channel. You were saying that Indian army has gone to Lahore and Islamabad, they have already conquered. That is not true. So yeah, looking at the media and the countries, right? So what we see in media is different than what exactly happens in the background. As you mentioned, some developed countries, they do not want to see other countries as becoming developed, but China is one example where it's good that China is developing and it's almost developed, but it's like a hypothesis, or it's assumption that this has been funded by China, where basically China has funded Pakistan and telling, okay, because all the goods and the export and everything is going down from China and coming to India. So if world exporters see India as a destabilized nation, then nobody will invest in India. And exactly the war is happening. So that might be another thing that China wants. So that's what my thinking is.
Yeah, I mean, Pakistan for a long time has received funding from other developed countries. Pakistan did not have the know-how to become a nuclear nation. That know-how also they got from other countries, right? And a lot of the terrorist organizations in Pakistan are there because it serves the interest of some of the other countries. And they exported the terror to different countries for different political and geopolitical reasons, right? So there is a lot of involvement, interests of other countries involved here. If you think of India, India has got a very difficult situation because, one of India's neighbors is Pakistan. Another of India's neighbors is China. Then Nepal's government is also a very leftist government, and because it's a very ultra leftist government, they like China, right? And then Bangladesh is another neighbor is Bangladesh, and also like China. In Bangladesh also now a very very leftist regime has come into power. Yeah, who again don't like India, right? There is so much of infighting going on in Myanmar. So there's a lot of instability and unrest going on in Myanmar. So India is one country which is thriving. It's a thriving marketplace. It's a thriving economy. There is tremendous amount of education among the youth. India is a very young country, and India's young have a lot of education and there a lot of progress going on. But the entire geographical setup, all the neighbors around India, there's a lot of challenge to be with them. So that is hurting India. Otherwise, I think India could have focused much more on development, right? But you have to protect your boundaries. Boundaries invest money in the army and things like that. Yeah. Like you mentioned some of these attacks before and how Pulwama happened and Balakot happened, right? One of the things India did after those attacks is heavily invest in army, heavily invest in weapons, and heavily invest in technology. Because India just realized if this sort of things continue happening, then India will have to get into a conflict, military conflict, and India needs to be prepared for them, right? So this sort of terrorist attacks, this sort of terrorist incidents, they have an impact. They have a huge impact in a nation's policy. And, in the last few years, the Modi government has ensured that Indian armed forces, Indian Navy, Indian Air Force, there was a lot of reinforcement in terms of catching up with the latest technology, having the latest technology at their disposal. But everything comes at a cost.
I think India needs to. Another thing is like India needs to start manufacturing on its own instead of like importing, especially the defense products. Because defense, each and every, like for example, F-16 costs $100 million. And if India is like importing or buying like 10 of them, $1 billion good dollars just goes away. So I'm just saying like, okay, India should start, like, I think India has started investing into the S-400. The India used during the war right now was coming from Russia, but there was another anti-missile system that India used, which was developed by DRDO. I was reading about it. So similar to that, India should start working on manufacturing the defense things by itself. That will help.
So actually, India does a lot of manufacturing in India. A lot of India's arms and aircrafts. India has a aircraft which is called Tejas. It is also being used. And if you see, like you can compare F-16 Tomcats with Rafale. India has bought a bunch of Rafale from France, right? So if you look at their specs, Tejas is pretty comparable with the Rafale, right? So Tejas is completely designed and manufactured by India. Then some of the anti-missile systems that you mentioned, what India has done is they have partnered with Russia So the designers come from Russia, but the actual manufacturing, assembling and manufacturing is happening in India. So under Make in India program, India in the last 10 years or so has increased in leaps and bounds the amount of manufacturing and the amount of assembly which is actually happening in India. So India is still doing know-how sharing with Russia and from some other countries. And yes, like India has bought Rafales, which are very expensive because that's the most advanced aircrafts you can have with your Air Force. Tejas is there, and India has also designed and manufactured a bunch of unmanned aircrafts also. So India is doing it.
Got it. Okay. That's a good part. Still, India spends like $74 billion in the entire army and infrastructure, right? I think that consists of everything, which is building in-house as well as importing. But compared to Pakistan, which is around like $8 billion or something like that, and China is way ahead, and even US. But yeah,
So ideally, you want a state of world where your budget allocation in arms is minuscule, and where your allocation on human resources, on education, on technology, on actually agriculture and other sectors is much more. So ideally, that is state. That is what you want. But then, when you live in a geography with so much conflict going on, although you want to prioritize and invest or allocate the highest amount of your finances and resources on development and technology and education, but the geopolitical reality might be that you need to really allocate and strengthen your army.
yeah, that is true. Cool, man. I think it was nice covering all the data and facts and everything. It was also nice talking to you and get your thought process. Any closing thought that you want to provide in this topic?
I would say not only the Indians, but the rest of the world should recognize the amount of restraint and ethics Indian Army has shown, and how just the Indian response was, the original Indian response was. I also think, when there is a terrorist attack in US like 9/11, or when there is a terrorist attack in France, we say it's a terrorist attacks. We say terrorists. Do you talk about Indian media? I was seeing BBC and I was seeing some other foreign media. They did not even use the word terrorist. They did not even use the word terror. They said some gunmen came and militants. So they are saying militants, they are saying gunmen. They're not using the word terrorism. They're not saying terrorists, right? Interesting. So it should not be the case that when there is a terrorist attack in USA, it is terrorist. When there is a terrorist attack in France, it is terrorist. But when there is a terrorist attack in India, it is not a terrorist. It is militant. So I think the global media need to acknowledge that it's a terrorist attack, right? And if you see also in the global media, nobody is talking about the original terrorist. So the global media, the narrative, whether it's US media or whether it's European media or whether it is media in UAE, if you see what the narrative is, oh, India and Pakistan, they have been fighting with each other for a long, long time. It's just messy. Kashmir is a problem. They are continuing to fight. But nobody is talking about an unprovoked and cynical, barbaric terrorist attack which has started it, right?
Yeah.
So when you dilute the whole thing, you never mention about the terrorist attack, and you try to sell a narrative, oh, India and Pakistan, they keep fighting, it's a fight. It's a very dehumanizing
thing that they did.
Yeah. So it's not like India and Pakistan just, they like to fight, they are fighting. It's not like that. There was a brutal terrorist attack.
How these terrorists get this hard to kill innocent? So, okay, army is one thing. Army has like guns and everything. Go, if you want something, go and talk to army or attack army. But you are attacking civilians who are just have like ice cream in their hands, not even guns, right? So that is a simple barbaric attack that they did. And that has to be like answered, which India is doing great. Yeah. Cool, man. Sounds good. Thank you so much again to be on my channel. And it was nice talking to you. Maybe next time we should bring up another topic.
Nice talking to you, Manish.
Thank you.